Delighted to introduce Jodie Mattia, Director of Support Services, Wetaskiwin Regional School, who is also completing her PhD in Educational Administration with a research focus on leadership well-being, and Lorna Muise, Team Lead from Health Promotion, Alberta Health Services Central Zone. Together, they will be presenting on the topic of supporting staff wellness during a pandemic. You'll be able to find this webinar on our website, as well with all the other ones as well. Following the presentation, we will allow some time for questions. You are able to post these in the chat tab throughout, and Jodie and Lorna will do their best to answer all of them. Following the conclusion of the webinar today, there will be a very short evaluation. It will be greatly appreciated if you could take some time to participate. This survey helps to inform future webinars, so please do let us know if there's a specific topic you'd like to see. Before I turn it over to Jodie and Lorna, we wanted to get a sense of who's in the room today. In a couple seconds here, you'll see a poll pop up on the screen. Please select which group best represents you. So I will leave that open for a couple seconds here. Great, so it'll be closing in about 5 seconds. Great. The next question that we have is for you is who is working remotely? So if you could please select the answer that represents your current work situation. So nearly 73% of participants today are working remotely. Oh, 74. Perfect. Thank you guys for participating. I will now turn it over to Jodie and Lorna.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. I'm just going to try and get hopefully the right monitor up. Otherwise, you'll just be looking at this screen. Is the right monitor showing?
Yes, it is, Lorna. That's
Thanks,
correct.
Jodie. So, yeah, this is Lorna speaking. I'm the team lead for health promotion in Central Zone, and I have the privilege of not only working with an incredible group of AHS staff that supports school communities, but some amazing jurisdiction partners, and one of them is on the line with me today, Jodie Mattia. So Jodie and I sat down last week, and I had said to her, would you do this with me? And I've got some slides ready. Can we just talk about it? And so we had a really cool conversation. And I said, you know, rather than assigning slides, why don't we just repeat this conversation that we've had and see what happens, and see what happens when we do something a little bit more casual, a little bit more off the cuff. And my hope is that we'll have an authentic conversation that will maybe offer you some insights, get you to think about some things, and I hopefully what we are saying will reaffirm some of your practices and maybe even solidify what you're doing as part of what's being played out in the research as well.
Absolutely. And Lorna, I won't try to remember word for word what we talked about last week, but looking forward to the conversation today.
Oh, me too. And if I could move forward my slides, I'd even be happier.
There you go. You're good.
Finally got it. Okay, so Jasmine already mentioned who we are, and Jodie and I have worked together, I want to say, for over 10 years, I think.
Yes,
Jodie was,
correct.
Yeah, you were a principal, then a district principal, and we've just been really closely connected through the wellness work in Wetaskiwin Regional Public Schools.
So true.
So we're going to share a bit of a framework. It's something Jodie presented about 8 months ago when we had a meeting up in Wetaskiwin. We're going to talk a bit about leadership, what the research is indicating strong leaders are doing, talk about some promising practices and some silver linings. So last fall, I was in a meeting in Wetaskiwin with Jodie's crew, her wellness committee, and we were just looking at our logic model and our action plan, and Jodie got this light and said, I need to show you something. So Jodie, take it away.
So we were talking about wellness and well-being, and we were using these terms interchangeably. And this is some of the work that I had delved into. And so, I read this outstanding article called The Challenge of Defining Well-Being. And as you can see there, that it's by Dodge, ETAL, and others from 2012. And when I was preparing my proposal for research, one of the things I really learned was the challenge of defining well-being and wellness. And so well-being, and this really resonated with me in the work we do in schools, because it's really, the model of well-being is so dynamic and multidimensional and individual. So it's not easy to define, and that's really what this article spoke to. And so this was the model. Now I've adapted it. So well-being is in the middle of the fulcrum there, and it's really about balance. And depending on the challenges that we face in life, for some, they won't seem very much like challenges because they have the resource on the other side to balance. You can see that it breaks it down there into 3 specific areas for us to focus on. And what I really like about the areas that really resonated was that it wasn't solely about doing well-being. So that list of activities was actually about being. So it also has that balance of being and doing. And so it really resonated with our group in regards to, this is what well-being looks like for us. And so right now we have a lot of challenges, but we also have a lot of resources available. And so what is it that will work for us?
What I liked about it too, Jodie, is that day we were looking at it at a systems level, and we were talking about, in your district, a school had burnt down recently, and there had been some changes in administrators. We knew your superintendent was planning on retiring. And so we just looked at it at a systems level. But I also remember Christian, who was the principal on our committee, and him saying how much this would help him have conversations with his staff. So I love that we could look at it through a macro lens or a micro lens.
Absolutely, and that personal lens, right? So it can go all the way through the organization, right, from an overarching view to ourselves. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I think right now it really is, it makes sense, especially right now when we're in the same storm, but our boats are so different. And so for many of us, probably our ship might be leaning a little bit to one side. And really the important part is balancing our own ship so that we can help others balance theirs.
Absolutely. I think that's one of those key pieces, is for us to recognize that each of us has those different resources and we see those challenges differently, and that's okay. That's really okay. And for us to be accepting of that is really key.
Mm-hmm. I think the word comes up on the next slide, but the word grace has been so meaningful to me right now, as we really need to give each other grace. So a couple of the articles we came across, these both come from Harvard. One is from the Harvard School of Business, and the other is from, I should have been changing my pages as we go. Sorry, it was such a good
it was, one was from the review, the other was from the school, but both from Harvard Business.
That's right. Yeah. So we had just looked at, what's the difference between being a leader and being a manager at these times. And I recall you saying, Jodie, your favorite one was right at the top.
It really is. If we're able to model calm, it really, especially as leaders, and regardless of the position, when we're working with other people, they see us as leaders. And if we're able to model that calm, it allows other people to be calm. And I'll speak a little tiny bit about regulation in a bit, but yeah, it's so key and important. And it reminds me of the Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there's space, and that's for pause, which really allows us to maintain that calm. I mean, it's a choice we get to make at this time when there's so much that's out of our control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about the reaction versus the response. Yeah, the difference between the two being a breath. And I've got such a great manager, and her title is manager, but she is such a good leader. and she just exudes that calmness every time we gather collectively as a team. We just did it this morning. We do it every Thursday morning. We collectively come together, and she just has that calm. But then when I look at the other side, that taking a narrow view, her job as a leader has been to be so broad-minded and to see the bigger picture and to be looking 2 months down the road as to what we need to be doing on our team. And I think for lots of leaders, you're not living just today, but you're living 2 months out and already starting to be strategic about where things need to be in place, what needs to be happening, and looking so much more broadly. And I think that really is the job of a leader, is to look broadly, but support in the now as well.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, Lorna, is be in the present. And when we're with people, to really be in the present with our people, I think is so key and shows that confidence piece in your number 2.
And I think it'll probably come up again and again, but the importance of getting their eyes. And I know that's a Jodie Carrington line, but we need to get each other's eyes and to somehow find a way to see each other.
Absolutely. That's that connection.
We got together, we were together last Monday, I believe, with our zone. So we had, I think, 10 school divisions represented on a call, and we were just talking about food security and staff wellness. And people started introducing themselves, and I honestly got a little emotional because I'm missing my partners. I'm missing seeing your faces. And we got towards the bottom of the list, and our partner in Wildrose, Darlene, said her name. And well, I went to college with Darlene, and I'm really missing her. Wolf Creek, I'm not so concerned about. And I know Ian's on the line, so I can do that to him, but Ian's my neighbor, and I actually get to see Ian, so I kind of got emotional at Darlene, and then it was good because Ian brought me back around going, oh, he's just 2 blocks away, and I see him all the time, and we can check on each other, and that's been good. But seeing him is important. That's important to me.
And I think, Lorna, just having that level of awareness that those pieces are important and being really intentional about those is just so key at this time for us. It doesn't need to be the big things, it's those little pieces, and for us to really be cognizant of those. When we have the opportunity to have those interactions, and when we hear somebody's voice, and just to really have that appreciation and grace and compassion and all of those pieces, right, that all fit into there.
Yeah, what a great segue to this comment. Erin Manning from Chinook's Edge, when we were meeting last week, I had to pause the meeting when she said this: where there are unknowns, people are unsettled. And it was such a good statement, because even on our team at work, I know we've had unknowns. And when people, even if people hear your voice or get a communication from you of some kind, even if it's to say, I don't know yet, that reach out is so important.
So true. And I think one of the pieces around communication is that need for that really clear messaging. And that was a really beautiful example, Lorna, of clear messaging. I don't know yet, but when I know, I'll share that information with you. And for us, as we move forward in communication, is really using that simple and concrete language. 1 to 2 points, and not trying to teach a whole bunch of pieces and content right now. That could be with our students, but also with our adult community, be that our staff or the families that we're working with. And that with those 1 to 2 key points, that we say them 3 to 4 different ways, because us as human beings are currently so impacted by everything that's going on. And Dr. Bruce Perry spends a lot of time with us each week. And I should make sure to get that link to Jasmine in regards to Bruce's website. But really being mindful of how much we're communicating, and that it's really clear and concise for us. Is so helpful, and the use of visuals. So the fact that we're doing a webinar where you don't see our faces but you see our slides actually helps us listen.
Awesome. Jodie, why don't you go a bit more? I know you sent me some promising practices. Lots of them came from Dr. Perry's work. So you do is it a weekly coffee?
Yes. So he actually hosts office hours. He doesn't want to open them up to the public, but he does for educators and people in our area and in our field. So he holds office hours 3 times a week. In our mountain zone, it is from noon to 1. And he discusses in his neurosequential model, which is a trauma-based model, and many of us are feeling that impact. And he talks about what do we need to be thinking about what's happening with us right now. And so here's some of the promising practices that I pulled out of the last 6 weeks of spending 3 hours a week with Dr. Bruce Perry. To maintain that structure and routine in our lives is really important. So I saw that poll, how many people are working at home or remotely, and making sure even when we're working remotely that we establish a routine and then we maintain that. It's one of those key areas for our mental and physical well-being. I know it sounds surprising to say that's about physical well-being, but it does help our body maintain a rhythm and routine. So the social and emotional focus, really focusing on those academics way before we focus on, the love and safety before we focus on academics, or in our world of work, all of the tasks and things we need to do. So how am I today? How am I feeling? What do I need to do to make myself be in a good space? So being and doing is connected with it. But is that, doing some meditation or engaging in that? Is it actually reaching out and waving to my neighbor, having a phone call? What is that for yourself? Because that's really the most important piece. Bruce has talked about connection a lot. I love I know the phrase is shifting and changing, which is great because it's not really about social distancing, it's about physical distancing and staying socially connected. And that's really that connection piece there. And talks about it's not really about how much or how long we're connecting with others. It's what's the quality of that. And so for Lorna, if I can use your example, even hearing Darlene's voice and how impactful and how that filled your bucket. And even our conversation last week, it wasn't a long conversation to go over this, and it was just such a quality connection. And so for us to, again, be really intentional and mindful as we engage in those. I love the next point, and this is a little bit of Dr. Perry, and this is a little bit of Kevin Cameron from Southern Alberta. Slow down. We all need to slow down. We're in such a hurry, especially when we're working with others, or we feel like we need to get so much done. Because if we don't slow down, we're going to burn out. At this time, Dr. Perry talked about as human beings, at the start of the pandemic, we were probably functioning at about 75% of our capacity. And he said, as weeks go on, and if we don't see shifts and changes back to what we consider normal, we can expect that to reduce. So really, that links back into compassion and grace for ourselves also. We can't do what we did before in the same amount of time. Our bodies and our minds are just not in that space. And then one of the key pieces for those that are working with children as parents or within the education or healthcare fields, a dysregulated adult can never regulate a dysregulated child. And we also like to say that a dysregulated leader can't support and regulate other adults. So Dr. Perry spends a lot of focus on co-regulation and that we really regulate each other as human beings because we're social animals. And that has kind of been taken from us a little bit. That's probably one of our greatest stressors in the pandemic. So there, Lorna, any thoughts, questions? Did I miss anything from our conversation before?
Oh, you covered so much, and we probably could have a conversation on each of those points. You just did it so smoothly. I do remember, and I don't know if it was our conversation or if it was with our zone group, where we talked about what we expect from students right now. And wasn't it we should expect them to do half of what they were doing before and then half again?
That's correct. Absolutely. And that's if they are available. So our families, we each work with families that are really vulnerable, and vulnerable families, some will be able to engage at this time, and some are literally just trying to manage their day-to-day and, quite honestly, in really basic terms, survive. And so academics and that schoolwork component, as much as that's routine, they may not be available to engage.
So then I think, so we're talking staff wellness. How does that apply to our staff? Because it's true, we've got so many teachers who have little kids of their own, who are trying to teach, who are trying to be the parent at home teaching. And, I think we just need to be really cognizant of each other's story right
I,
now and what we can
I
give.
totally agree. And that's that being really taking that time to say, okay, so what are my challenges and what resources do I have, back to the model, and what is that balance? Because in education, we often think that we need to be superhuman, and that's not the case. We just need to be super honest and say, you know what, this is how much I can do. And being that parent that is, working full time and going into the office and have a junior high child and all of these pieces, who's not a self-starter, love him to pieces, not a self-starter. So we're doing homework much of the evenings, and there's nights where I just can't do it because I'm done and he's done, and that's okay. Right. And to be forgiving and know where our boundaries and our limits are, and that we don't have to be superhuman.
Oh, I hear you, Jodie. I've got that junior high boy too, and his principal's on the line. I saw his name. Just Yeah, my boy and my daughter both need a bit of grace too, because their days are very different from mine, and I know I came home one day and my husband said, your life is very different. You leave and you get to go to work and you get to see people, and I do the grocery shopping, so I'm getting to be around people, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not at home all the time.
Mhm.
And that's something we need to think about with our partners if they are at home. And yeah, it's just something to consider.
Absolutely. And that's, forgiving us and the permission to say, you know what, I have the permission to not do this today. I have the permission to do and we all know that we're doing the best that we can at this time. And that is just really so important.
Yeah. So just moving on. So I love that we had that bit of a foundation to look at promising practices. But if we take a bit more of a specific look, and we're going to look at a few different stakeholder groups right now, senior leadership. So we had talked at our Zone 4 conversation around senior leaders and just that importance of maintaining some type of a wellness strategy that looks at all dimensions of wellness for staff. And to not let that slide off, because we know right now that's probably the most important piece to keep our people working. And what we really heard loud and clear last week was the importance for senior leaders to target your administrators. We heard that staff don't want an overabundance of communication from central office. They want to hear from their administrators. So to just be strategic in who is sending out information and who you're sending information to. And really look at your health champion network to promote healthy messages. And one of the specific things we had in our group last week was tips for working from home, because how hard is it for an educator who's used to being on their feet all day in front of a rambunctious group of students to be now at home in front of a computer. I had an interaction with the principal of my children's school. I'm parent council president, and he asked if we wanted to have a parent council meeting, and my response was, I am virtually exhausted. I'm so tired of being on my computer, but I know it's where we need to be right now, and it's where we need to be if we're going to connect with larger groups of people.
Which is so true, Lorna, and it's that understanding too, when we're in our Google Meets or our Zoom meetings or whichever platform we're working from, that it takes more energy from our bodies and our brains to engage in this exchange. And so just having that basic understanding that I am going to be more tired, and I maybe do need to take a little extra time away to rest so that I can stay well, is so important. And I just completely support that. We really need for our senior admin to focus on our school leadership, our school administrators, and making sure that they too are being well as they're leading their staff in this really rapid changeover and switch in learning modality.
Mhm. And I, in some places it's possible for those senior leaders, central office teams to get out and see their people. Some places it may not, but I think it makes a big difference when you can get eyes on. And same thing here, we've moved to school leadership, but really the important part for our principals and your leadership team, focus on your staff. And just the other day I heard a story of a principal here in Red Deer where the principal went out and delivered little gifts to every single member of her staff, got eyes on her staff just with a quick delivery, a quick visit at the doorstep. And I think like that just warmed my heart when I heard that she had done that.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful story for sure. And I one of the pieces I really like in here, Lorna, in regard, well, all of them are awesome points, but that check in as often as staff need for our school leaders, and then for our senior leaders to be aware of the same thing for our school leaders, but that it's really a staff need, and to not overwhelm our staff by leadership constantly checking in with them. So it's that real balance, as you shared at the beginning, Lorna, between leading and managing. And so for us that are supporting staff to have that level of awareness, what is it that I am doing right now?
So we were trying to guess who would be on the call, and I don't think I saw any trustees, Jasmine. I'm not sure if I saw any parents, but we do know if you have parents in your community who are interested in doing some things, I'm sure most of us are parents on the line. Some things that can be done, send a supportive message to school staff. I know I've got a golden teacher and I have tried to let her know how much I appreciate the ongoing communication she's offering right now. Heart Attack the School. If you don't know what that is, it's just love notes. Post love notes on your school. Have a gratitude parade. And we just did one in Lacombe for the Catholic and public schools. We got some parents together and we just drove by all the schools, honked horns even though we weren't supposed to, and just shouted our thanks. And we did it on the last day of April because that's when the EAs in our district were finishing up their employment with the school division for this year. Or chalk it up. I'm seeing so many chalk messages on AHS sites at our hospitals in Calgary. We know that we've still got teachers, some administrators heading into school buildings. So if you want to take your artwork to school, I've seen kids doing math projects. Do your homework on the sidewalk in front of the school with your kids and make it a fun thing so that the teachers get to see it when they come into work.
Absolutely. And then do check out if your region has a mental health capacity building program. They have a whole host of strategies that families can engage in, the school community that can engage in. So there's no shortage, and Lorna and I talked about that, there's no shortage of tips and ideas. We were keeping with our communication clear, small numbers, not overwhelming. But yeah, such great ideas.
Absolutely. And then I had thought about too if we had trustees, and I know we didn't have trustees on the call, at least we didn't when we started, but if any had joined, just the thought, like, trustees, take care of your superintendents. Make sure that your superintendent team is supported and getting what they need as well, because often they're busy filling everybody else's buckets or checking in on everybody else, but please be those people that check in on your principals, but you also have school assignments, so make sure you're checking in on those administrators as well. I think the more that we're checking in at a respectful level, the more supported people will feel.
Absolutely. And I was out on my morning walk this morning, and in someone's window it said, and I've read it multiple places, but we are in this together. And I think that's really so key and reinforces that point, Lorna. And, you know, when Jodie Carrington, she shares that relationship has no hierarchy, I think this is a really great example of where we just really need to support and take care of each other at this time.
Oh, that's so true, Jodie. I've got another story to share with you at a different time, but yeah, hierarchy, no, you know what? Reach out to people, all levels of people. If someone's making you smile, let them know. Even if you don't know them, send them a note. It's heartwarming what happens.
Absolutely. which lead beautifully into the silver linings. And so, we often can get caught in all of the negative aspects of what's taken place during the pandemic. However, there are so many silver linings. Lorna and I were having a lot of fun having this conversation last week because, wow, the increase in family connectedness and taking time together. And Lorna shared the story around her daughter's birthday, and it was the best one, and they were so connected as a family. And the number of family dinners and pieces that are going on. And so how is it that we can shift and change our thinking so that we really are able to look at all of the positives that have taken place due to needing to slow down, stay home, and really be together, and how can we reach out? And we have the time now to stop and think about that, because we're not running to 6 different activities with our kids or even ourselves, that we have the time to do this. And we talked about the earth healing and having the ability to heal, and just how important that is. So
Yeah, you know what? And if people want to throw in the chat box, if you have had a question or if there's something that's been a silver lining for you, please feel free to share. Jodie, I have a youth group at my church, and 2 weeks ago we decided we were going to have a cupcake and cake decorating competition. The family was allowed, and we made sure everybody got the materials they needed. And the family was allowed to keep the cake, but they had to give away the cupcakes, or they could play with it as they wish. And last night we did a check-in, and oh my gosh, I couldn't believe how talented these girls were at decorating. And then they started giving me the list of people they took cupcakes to, and it just was so heartwarming to know that while they've had a bit more time to be so incredibly creative, but then to be so giving and generous in handing cupcakes. Like, how hard is that to make these and then have to give them away? And they did a beautiful job.
And yet how bucket filling and heartwarming it is, because of course when we give of ourselves in that way, it just makes us feel better, right? Totally fills our bucket too.
Absolutely. So Jodie, maybe we still have a bit of time.
That.
And we had talked about this eco cycle of change and maybe throwing it up as something that maybe we could introduce and explain a bit how we've used it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just had go ahead, Lorna.
Oh, did you get a message there?
But that's okay.
Okay. So we've worked in a number of our school divisions here in central Alberta with a gentleman named Peter DeVos, and Peter was with he was helping with board development. And so he showed us this eco cycle of change, and I'm going to guess it was 7 or 8 years ago, but this diagram comes from Mark Cabage, who was with the Tamarack Institute. And it really just shows the cycle of organizations. So the top left corner where it says exploration, that's where an organization is looking at possibilities. It could be that you're starting up in a phase, starting up a new organization, starting up a new partnership. But it's really that place where you're thinking and wanting to do something. And then bottom left corner, we go into development, and we're starting to create something. And I know I've used this with a few different school divisions. It's where we've created and developed a wellness strategy. And then we move up into maturity. We're going along. Things are feeling pretty solid. We've got some good staff wellness initiatives happening. And then crisis, and what a great place this is to talk about COVID. So COVID has hit us. We have to let go of how we have done business in the past. We need to let go of how we have supported wellness in the past and really look forward. How can we do it differently? How can we do it on this online platform? How do we do it at a social distance or at a physical distance, but maintain our social connection? Oh, I know I keep mixing those up, because what's going to happen is we're going to cycle back up to a place where we need to be exploring those possibilities again so that we can create a new baseline and a new place of work.
And that is actually really exciting work that we get to do. And so it's not like, oh my goodness, it's we get to choose, right? I think about mindset, and we get to choose our response to that. We didn't get to choose COVID, but we totally get to choose our response, and our response and how we engage in the eco-cycle of change. And change always allows for growth. And are we going to make mistakes as we go along? Absolutely, that's our best learning for sure. So just taking a look at our chat box here, Lorna, I see we have, I think, 4 minutes left. So shout out to Jillian in Fort McMurray. Hope you guys are doing well. She said these reminders couldn't have come at a better time, Lorna. I'm not sure if you're able to see that chat box there.
Yeah, I'm seeing it here. Yeah,
that's awesome. So thank you for the comments through there.
Sure, yeah, I'm just trying to catch up to them too. Oh, Anita says we have written prayer cards for families receiving food hampers. Oh,
Yes.
nice. From Holy Spirit School Division. Thank you for sharing
Yes, and
that.
then we also have thank you emails to staff that have gone out, which I think, it really is a time where we can practice our gratitude. And we know that gratitude is a practice, so that's really fantastic. And again, a great opportunity. It's one of those silver linings that we have the time that we can do that to support others.
Oh, I'm seeing here too, Fort
Yeah.
McMurray, and just oh, my heart goes
Yeah,
out
me
to you.
too.
When you guys, when you had the fires 4 years ago, our Zone 4 group was meeting that next day, and you know what? We all offered a silent prayer before we got started that day, thinking of you and thinking of you again. I spent a year up at the college, and oh, hearts are with that crew up there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess just overall, and for Fort McMurray, really keep it simple. I don't watch the news very much, but I did see the footage of how the community, no different than during the fires, has really come together. And what a great model for us to look at. Like, what resilience and ways to be helping out each other in those simple, nothing fancy, because I think that's the key piece. We don't need to be fancy. We're keeping it simple, but really engaging. And that's what I saw even on the news story, was just how people are engaging with each other. So it just goes right back to that social connection and how important it is.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah. Please stay connected. I know I ran into one of our teachers on the way home from school who was walking through the neighborhood, and we were having a nice chat, and she looked at her watch. She goes, "Oh, I've got to get home. I've got a social hour with the crew." And I found out who the crew was, and it was 3 other teachers from school, and they gather every Friday afternoon and have a connection time, shall we say, and just talk about their week.
Which is awesome. So Lorna, I see we have 2 minutes left. Any questions? I think that was our last one, right? Does anyone have any questions for us? Oh, we have multiple. Lots of people are typing, I see. Multiple attendees are typing.
And if anyone wants to dare to go off, unmute themselves and offer a question or a comment, we'd love to hear your voice. Multiple people.
Yes.
Typing. Oh, it's been so good to spend time with you,
and
Jodie.
You, Lorna.
And I would encourage people, often we get in front of a screen and we think we need to do a formal presentation. We tried something different today, tried a bit more of a conversation with a bit of a presentation mixed in there. I sure enjoyed the free flow. Would have loved to have heard from other voices, but it's a bit tough on these kind of platforms as well.
True, especially with our time, right? And recognize that this is actually probably the perfect length of time for our attention at this time, but yeah.
For mine.
Yes, and I see Jasmine's answering the questions around the slide deck and sending that out.
Yeah, you bet. We'll be happy to share it with folks.
Awesome.
And you know what, guys, everyone on the line, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your time today. Thank you. I'm sure each and every one of you has been intentional in your efforts, and it's appreciated. And I know Jodie said earlier, to not go too fast. And I think maybe our medical officer of health has said this is a marathon.
Mhm.
It's not a
That's right.
sprint. Slow and
Absolutely.
steady. Slow and steady, we can
5
do this.
kilometers at a time. That's how you do a marathon, which is awesome. And I encourage you too to take care of yourself and be kind to yourself in the work that sometimes we forget about ourselves. So please make sure to be kind to yourself.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks,
Jodie.
Lorna. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for
Thanks,
the
everyone.
opportunity,
Yes, thank you,
Jasmine.
Jasmine.
Take
Absolutely. And
care,
I
Take
have a
care.
couple
everybody.
slides to present here.
Oh, and Jasmine, are you wanting to go back? I need to
Maybe
stop
share
sharing
my
so that you
slide.
can do the exit survey, right?
So thank you so much, Jodie and Lorna, for the impactful and timely presentation. I think I speak for everyone when I give you a virtual round of applause. The delivery was amazing. You kept me engaged the entire time. And thank you so much for all the tips. Thank you, everyone that participated in the chat box. It was great to see. I want to take this opportunity right now to bring the web links tab to your attention. So it's along the sidebar. You'll find links to some of the Blue Cross tips mentioned in the presentation. And I also want to highlight some resources from another comprehensive school health partner of ours, the Alberta School Employee Benefit Plan. So AHSCWF provides workplace wellness support by partnering with your leadership group, wellness champions, and wellness committees to facilitate solutions based on the health and wellness goals of your workplace. Talk to your employer about how AHSCWF can support your workplace with a well-founded approach that has you and your colleagues' needs in mind. So the first resource I want to highlight is the Wellness Sandbox. It's a collaborative site that promotes and shares workplace health resources and ideas. So you'll be able to find great resources, inspiring blogs, and a place to connect with other champions. So along the web links tab, you'll see the AHSCWF resources to support staff wellness. In there, you'll find links to some featured resources. The next resource I want to highlight is the Homewood Health. So Homewood Health is AHSCWF's Employee Family Assistance Program. So Homewood's EFAP and Crisis Management Program offer multilingual and fully accessible 24/7 services. The EFAP program is available to employees, spouses, partners, and dependents as well. For those of you that are not covered by AHSCWF benefits, the Government of Canada has partnered with Homewood Health to offer some services in English and French to the Canadian public. You may access Homewood Health services in the Homewood Health link in the web links tab, as well as there are links in the there are links to featured resources in the AHSCWF resources to support staff wellness document, also linked in the web links tab. I just wanted to thank you all and remind you that if you have any questions or would like to access the slides following the conclusion of today's presentation, you may email ahscwf@ualberta.ca and also visit our website at wellnessfund.ualberta.ca. I will now take the opportunity to conduct our quick evaluation survey. So if you could please stick around, it'll be very brief, I promise. So considering your expectations prior to the webinar, was the content what you expected? Leave that open for a couple more seconds. Great, I will be closing this one and moving along. The next poll, what did you think about the amount of time allotted for the webinar?